This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Today we're going to be looking at another heavily requested ElectroBOOM video. Specifically his Marx generator, making 500,000 volt arcs with the Marx generator. To give you a sense of scale, the main generator output voltage at the nuclear plant I worked at was a mere 25,000 volts. And our switchyard was a mere 345,000 volts. Granted, he's talking about arcs, not sustained voltage, but still. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tyler Folse. I'm a nuclear engineer with a little over 10 years of experience in the commercial nuclear power industry. From engineering to operations to emergency response. I don't claim to know everything there is nuclear, but I can certainly share some knowledge. Get right into it.
Hi, today I'm going to attempt to make the largest arc of my life! Which could be pretty small compared to some arcs other people make, but it will be the largest for me! If I can actually make it.
This guy's hilarious.
And of course, it goes without saying, don't try this at home! All I need is my super high voltage generator circuit that's affecting my lights.
Just casually plays around, moves wires together, creating sparks and flames and... Oh, man. I know I've watched a few of his videos now, but I don't think I'm going to get tired of this.
Combined to something called a Marx generator. Marx generator is made of multiple similar stages of high voltage capacitors, resistors, and spark gaps to make an already high voltage input into a super high voltage output. And I'm thinking I could probably use my super high voltage capacitor I made a while back. I made my capacitor using two layers.
The Marx generators are interesting. I mentioned about stepping up main generator output voltage to grid voltage. You're not going to use a Marx generator for that. And while Marx generators do have the advantage of creating extremely high voltages with a somewhat simple design, I mean, it's going to deliver these precise controlled pulses, it can get pretty out of hand when you try to synchronize something like this to the grid because of all these pulses, the arcs, the timing, and you're going to lose a lot of energy in those spark gaps. So all these megawatts of energy that you're producing in a nuclear plant, which is upwards of 1,400 per unit, you don't want to lose that, and you don't want to create arcs that big in your switch yard. Because that's the main reason why you raise the voltage as high as it does for transmission, is to minimize the amount of megawatts lost traveled over long distances. Now, 500,000 volts isn't unheard of for more remote generation facilities. You'll step up you'll step it up to 500 volts just because it's going to be traveling much long distances. It's worth the extra costs and the extra steps, the extra turns in your transformers for stepping it up, just because you don't lose as much energy traveling over long distances. That's the trade-off you work with for grid transmission. But all the energy lost and trying to synchronize something like that to a grid would be insane. Is why you're not going to see it used in large-scale energy production. But they're fun for experiments.
Of aluminum foil separated by some plastic that should be able to handle tens of kilovolts. And I should be able to charge it using my circuit that creates...
Dude! Why? Man, another jumpy... That one didn't seem planned. I mean, maybe it did, and he's just includes these as part of his videos, but that one was almost as much as that Jacob's Ladder scene. If you haven't seen my reaction to that, I'll pin it in a comment down below. Oh my goodness.
Clearly I haven't learned my lesson. Damn it. Burn my skin too. Handling high voltage is very dangerous and can easily kill you if you don't have a horseshoe up your butt.
I recognize the expression meaning you're extremely lucky, but that horseshoe was also going to act as a conductor, so I wouldn't recommend putting one of those in as a protective measure. But no gloves, just sitting there with these open... Dude, I know he's knowledgeable, and he's certainly more knowledgeable than me about all things electrical, but still seeing this is just is mind-boggling to me to watch.
Maybe that's why I can't sit comfortably. Don't hold high voltage output while holding the ground. All your muscles will contract. It feels like you're hit by a truck.
And maybe put some gloves on so you don't burn yourself.
From everywhere, and if you have to, touch the circuit with only one hand. Anyway, let me see if I can use my rectified voltage
circuit with two hands.
Charge my huge capacitor. Should just take a moment. What the I managed to kill my self-made capacitor.
Yeah, that's what that sounded like.
The insulation was damaged here, and the high voltage jumped between the layers and melted the capacitor.
Man.
See, now the capacitor can't handle the high voltage at all. What is that?
It's jumping across, yeah. Look at that.
This is interesting. See, the charges are flying over air due to...
Let me know if you want me to see the homemade capacitor one. I haven't watched that video of his yet. This looks like the most sketchy thing I've seen in a while.
Corona discharge, charging the capacitor enough for it to break down and repeat periodically. Yeah, See, there is like a very large resistor that can conduct under very high voltage due to corona discharge.
Yes.
And it charges the capacitor to very high voltage. And the plates of the capacitor being so close at some point, they arc and short the capacitor and discharge it periodically.
That's the thing about very high voltage is they can do these little jumps. And that's the thing that's always with electrical stuff. I'm a bit more mechanically inclined. And think of it as like, water running through pipes or something. The water doesn't, like, if you stop the pipes in front of each other, the water's not going to jump across. This is the crazy thing is that the voltage, think of it as giving it plenty of jump potential. Why it's called electrical potential.
Look, my capacitor broke, so I ordered a bunch of 15,000 volts 2 nanofarad ceramic capacitors. Let me see if I can recreate my broken capacitor situation. Here you see I put a small gap between the legs of my capacitor, and now I can charge it with the high voltage to create the same effect.
Let's see.
Well, this was the same thing, just much faster.
Yeah.
I guess I can increase the gap between the legs so that the capacitor can charge to a higher voltage. Let me turn off the supply first.
Dude, this is spooky, his jumps and everything. I know he does it for effect, but man. Yeah.
Capacitors hold charge and can shock you badly. Make sure
this kind of moving in close but not too close, and even sticking the screwdriver in there is this the electrical version of the demon core experiments? For those of you who don't know, the demon core is when they put two halves of a critical mass. This was done way back in the early days of nuclear power, shortly after World War II. They wanted to get neutron counts by moving two parts of a fissile mass close together without it causing a critical multiplication and dosing everyone. Well, they went too close and people tragically died.
Discharge them before you touch them. Here's a wider gap. It's not jumping anymore.
That one's way milder. Oh, never mind. Yeah, the initial jump.
Phew! It seems like the voltage is now above the 15,000 volt rating of the capacitor and just jumps directly between the legs.
Yeah.
I might have to put two of them in series then. Anyway, Marx generator uses the same concept. Quite a simple but smart voltage multiplier. The way it works is, imagine you have 10 capacitors like this and you go around and charge them one by one to say 100 volts. Then you connect them all in series. Now if you measure between the end and the beginning, you will have 10 times 100 or 1,000 volts across it. And that's what the Marx generator does. All of a sudden, you have a huge sum of voltage that can arc across a much longer distance to ground.
It is kind of like a ladder, but it's not that dissimilar to starting a self-sustaining fission reaction, because you can think of it as criticality being that point where the voltage is high enough to go across that first gap, and then it cascades forward. So think of it as when your neutrons, it's analogous to when you're producing just enough neutrons to fission enough uraniums to keep the reaction going. Because otherwise, the nuclear reaction will just shut itself down. And in the case of this Marx generator, if you don't have enough voltage, well, it's going to it's just going to hit those high resistors and not going to go anywhere.
When I saw this potential, I said, it's for me? After the discharge, all the capacitor voltages drop and the spark gaps open circuit and the cycle continues. Anyway, in addition to my high voltage capacitors, I bought some high power large 1 mega ohm resistors.
There you go.
Not for their power though, just that the resistor legs have to be spaced far enough. Otherwise the high voltage will arc across the resistor, which we don't want.
That's true too, because yeah, the resistors will essentially just not even do anything. Yeah, the thing about voltage is it can just jump around stuff.
Let's put them together.
Such cheery music.
Fortunately, I have these nice and round thingies I want to use for my spark gaps. These things are used on these curtain pull thingies. I solder them to a pin like this.
Wow. It's like it's so little and simple, but it could produce some serious
Here's
art.
my Marx generator ready to run. This is the output of the circuit and that's the ground, and hopefully there will be huge arcs between them when I turn on my power supply. And that's the ground, and hopefully there will be huge arcs between.
So you're probably wondering why you would even use something like this. Well, you can use Marx generators for nuclear fusion. Look at this crazy thing. This is the Z machine from Sandia National Lab. It can generate extremely high temperatures and extremely high pressures, which are conditions need to create nuclear fusion. It uses Marx generators to deliver a series of powerful electrical pulses. And these are delivered to a target which typically contains your fusion fuel like hydrogen, deuterium, tritium, that sort of thing. And these electrical pulses hit the target. They create that intense magnetic field, which compresses and heats the fuel. After all, for fusion, you need confinement time, pressure, and heat. And it does it to such a degree. This particular machine, you can even get into single-digit billions of degrees Celsius, which is insane. So yes, this can create nuclear fusion. It can also be used for other crazy physics experiments. So yes, as that electricity just flows through the wires, it does create that strong magnetic field to compress and heat the fuel undergoing fusion reactions, which release a large amount of energy and can generate pressures comparable to that in the core of the sun. Crazy. So this is one potential avenue for nuclear fusion, plus learning a lot of cool things about physics. However, this machine cost over $80 million back in the 1980s. But what if there was a way to learn a lot more about physics without having to spend that much? This brings us to our sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is the best way to learn math, data science, and computer science interactively. Let's say you want to learn about probability. Probability is one of the building blocks behind nuclear engineering, because after all, nuclear reactions are basically probability functions on a massive scale. And you can learn in as little as 15 minutes per day, at your own pace, at your own skill level. Whether you're still in high school or a nuclear engineer with a little over 10 years of experience in the commercial nuclear power industry. You can get started for free for 30 days, and the first 200 get 20% off an annual plan by visiting brilliant.org/tfulsenuclear. Click on the link down in the description.
And when I turn on my power supply,
nothing happened.
Nothing?
Don't stick your finger in
the high
there.
voltage. Maybe my gaps are too wide. I can raise the power supply to give it more voltage output.
Dude,
what's going on? Did you see that? The voltage was so high, the arcs, instead of jumping at the output, they were jumping across the resistors.
Yep.
Maybe I have to make my gaps shorter so the voltage drops, or maybe this gap shorter. Let's see. Hey!
I like that's the step. Turn it on, put your hands around your head, and get ready for the craziness.
some at the output, still jumps across the resistor.
Yeah.
I think I have to make my gaps shorter. I made my gaps shorter.
Basically, the electrical equivalent of climbing up one of the side poles of the ladder.
Now.
There we go.
There you go.
It's jumping from the right
Let me
spot.
make it wider now. Start jumping across the resistor, but that's large. Here's the room a bit darker. God, this is loud. That's not bad. Sometimes it jumps across the resistor. Higher voltage. See, it's jump. Oh, what happened?
Blow on it? What is this?
Starting to continuously arc.
I don't know what blowing on it. I know he's just being silly because that thing is so hot, such high voltage.
They say there is another way to run the circuit. See, right now I'm running my supply voltage at a lower level so the circuit doesn't trigger automatically. Okay. And then externally I can trigger the circuit. Say with my screwdriver I can short the first gap. See? And it jumps.
If you're gonna do that, at least put on some gloves, man.
There you go. Which might be good because it takes a couple of seconds for all the capacitors to fully charge. So this way I can give it time to charge and then trigger the circuit.
Manual triggers.
It's not bad. It just makes me a little bit sad that I can't supply a higher voltage to make an even larger arc because my resistors are not big enough and it will just arc across them. But I have another trick.
Get bigger ones?
I could cover the entire circuit with polyurethane for better insulation. There's stuff I put on my Tesla coil. First I cover the front of my spark gaps with masking tape to make sure they remain exposed. Then I cover everything, especially the exposed metals, with my polyurethane. Except maybe where I want to make contact.
Interesting idea.
The rest of the circuit. I put 5 coats on, but doesn't look like much. Hopefully it insulates enough. I also want to mount it on a plexiglass so I can hold it vertically. I don't know if this polyurethane made it any better. I'm still
go sing it in the dark.
Losing a lot of charge due to corona discharge.
That's another reason why the corona discharge is another reason why you're not going to see this in large-scale energy production. Any sources of loss that you get in this, I mean, regular voltage transformers aren't perfect either, but losses and big arcs. Not to mention frequency matching with the grid.
What's going on? Well, here we are. Let's see if it works.
It's a tower now. I'm getting Jacob's Ladder vibes.
Figure it myself, maybe? Hey!
Good lord.
Maybe I need to adjust the gaps again.
Please tell me he turned it off while he's doing that.
Polyurethane had a bad effect on it. I wouldn't add it next time. There we go. It is still pretty big.
That's a sizable arc.
It's beautiful. Maybe I'll remake it later to make the arcs even larger. I mean, is there ever an end to this adventure? Now you might ask, what's the point of this?
When you break it or when you seriously hurt yourself. But hey, I love this guy's optimism. It's contagious.
High voltage generator. What's wrong with you? Can't you see she's sexy? Well, this can be used for lightning tests and some future video ideas.
Thanks so much for the recommendation on this video. This was another crazy one that I thoroughly enjoyed. And thank you so much to Brilliant for sponsoring. Remember, learning about math, data science, nuclear physics, electrical engineering, this is way less expensive than financing your own Z machine and way safer than trying to make your own Marx generator in your house. I'll see you next time.